Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishna Nazir, Parak Aleph, Chapter 1, Mishna Beis, Mishna 2. All right. Now, as we mentioned, a Nazir, become a person who takes upon himself to be a Nazir, is forbidden to have not just wine, but any kind of grape products. That includes grape seeds and grape skins. So in this case, a person declares the following: Hareini Nazir ben achartzanim. Someone says, "I am a Nazir from grape seeds." Now, when you're a Nazir, you're more than just a Nazir from grape seeds. That's what he says. I am a Nazir from grape seeds. Umin azagim, or he says, I'm a Nazir from grape skins. Umin atagalachas, or he says, I'm a Nazir from hair cutting. Umin atuma, or he says, a Nazir from corpse tuma. So he's basically declaring himself a Nazir, but he's only mentioning one aspect of what a Nazir becomes forbidden in. Harei a Nazir, nonetheless, he is a full-fledged Nazir, and all the details of Naziris apply to him. Although when he made the vow of Naziris, he seemingly was only specifying certain prohibitions of the Naziris, and he sounds like he's saying, I'm a Nazir only from this, which he can't be. At the end of the day, he is subject to all of them, and that is because, as they bring down here in the notes, since he vows explicitly that he will become a Nazir, he is subject to all the Nazirist restrictions, even though he mentioned only one of them. And the fact that he only mentions one of them doesn't necessarily mean he's trying to say that's all I'm going to be a Nazir from. He's saying I'm going to be a Nazir from this. Yes, you will be a Nazir from this, because when you're a Nazir, you're not allowed to have those things, but it doesn't exclude all the other details of Naziris that go along, and therefore, even though he only mentioned one detail of Naziris, he becomes a full-fledged Nazir. That's the first case. Now, the next case of the Mishnah is again dealing with a case where there is, where the Mishnah leaves out a line, and that is that, as Barry asked yesterday, what's the minimum amount of time to be a Nazir? A person says, I'm a Nazir. How long are you a Nazir for? So we're going to learn that the minimum is 30 days. But if a person says, I'm a Nazir for 2 months, you're a Nazir for 2 months. You're a Nazir for 5 years, you're a Nazir for 5 years. There's such a thing also as a Nazir Olam. Person says, I'm going to be a permanent Nazir. He's going to be a Nazir forever. And there's another Naziris called Naziris Shimshon. Right? Shimshon from Tanakh was a Nazir, but his being a Nazir was not typical. It was not a regular Nazir, as we shall see. So when you make yourself a Nazir Shimshon, you're a Nazir forever like that. When you say a Nazir Olam, I'm going to be permanently a Nazir, you're forever like that. So the Mishnah is going to discuss eventually what's the difference between the two. But now the Mishnah says like this. A person says, Harini Kashimshon. I hereby take upon myself, I am hereby like Shimshon. Keven Manoyach. Or he says, I am hereby like the son of Manoyach. Who is the son of Manoyach? Shimshon. Okay, that was his father's name was Manoyach. Kabal Delilah, or like the husband of Delilah, right? That was the Philistine woman that Shimshon married. Kamishakal Dal says Aza. I am like the one who tore out the gates of Aza, which Shimshon did, as recorded in the book of Shoftim. Kamisha Nikru Palishtim Es Einav. I am like the one who the Philistines poked out his eyes. That's what happened to Shimshon at the end. Harei Zen Nazir Shimshon. When you say that, you are become a Nazir Shimshon, right? You're not saying I want to be like Shimshon because I want to be a strong man. When you're saying Hareini Kashimshon, it's understood that you're saying that you're going to be like Shimshon as a Nazir, and therefore, when you say any of these expressions, you now have taken upon yourself the Naziris of Shimshon. Now, Ma be Nazir Olam Nazir Shimshon. What's the difference between a Nazir Olam, a permanent, a forever Nazir, and a Nazir Shimshon? Now again, like whoever spoke about Nazir Olam, whoever spoke about this permanent Nazir. But as the Gemara points out, there really should be another sentence in the Mishnah that says if a person makes himself a Nazir Olam, he is a Nazir Olam. And now we need to know the difference between a Nazir Olam and a Nazir Shimshon, a permanent Nazir and a Nazir Shimshon, because both of them will be in that state permanently. So the Mishnah explains, Nazir Olam, if you are a permanent Nazir, Hichvit Sa'arai Mekel Basar, if let's say your hair grows heavy, it means it grows too long, you may lighten it with a razor, which means what? You can trim it. A person who is a Nazir Olam, now, if you're a Nazir for 3 years, you can't do this. You have to be a Nazir Olam for this. A Nazir Olam, a permanent Nazir, when his hair grows too long, he is actually able to trim it. What does he trim it with? A razor. Now, let me point out here something from the notes. He may trim his hair when it grows heavy, but he may not shave his head completely. Also, he may use only a razor, but not scissors. This is a leniency for a permanent Nazir. A standard Nazir is forbidden even to trim his hair with a razor as long as he is another, even if it's become another for many years. Okay? So again, if you're just a Nazir Stam and you didn't say permanent, you could have said 3 years. You can't do any of this. Can't trim your hair. So again, the Nazir Olam trims his hair. Trims, like I said, he doesn't shave his head completely, whatever shaving his head completely would mean. But you have to trim it. You can only trim it with a scissors. Again, this kind of a leniency does not apply by any other Nazir. Another thing they bring down here is a permanent Nazir is permitted to trim his hair only once every 12 months. It's not like, every month you can go ahead and take a trim. It's every 12 months. And this is learned from the story of Avshalom, the son of King David, who was a permanent Nazir and who would trim his hair once a year. Okay? So those are a little bit of the details when we say that a permanent Nazir can actually trim his hair with a razor. Umaybe shalish behemoths. And when he trims his hair, he's got to bring 3 animals. Now, a ordinary Nazir who completes his period of Nazir, he said I'm a Nazir for a month, and he completed it. He shaves his hair, and he has to bring 3 animals as karbanos. So even though this Nazir Olam is not completing his Naziris, it's going to continue, but when he does trim his hair, he's got to bring those same 3 karbanos. The same 3 animals that a Nazir who is completing his period of Naziris brings, this permanent Nazir brings those offerings when he trims his hair once a year. V'im nitma, and if this permanent Nazir becomes tamei, becomes tamei through a dead body, maybe carbon tuma. What does he do? He brings a carbon tuma. Now, typically, when you are a Nazir and you become tamei from a dead body during the Naziris period, what do? You got to start all over again. But in this case, there's no starting all over again. He's a permanent Nazir. But at the same time, he's not allowed to become tamei. And if he becomes tamei, he's got to bring a sacrifice to atone for the fact that he became tamei. There's a certain set of karbanos that a Nazir who becomes tamei has to bring. So those are the laws of a Nazir Olam, of a permanent Nazir. Nazir Shimshon, but if let's say you're a Nazir Shimshon, if your hair grows too heavy or too long, you cannot trim it. V'im nitma, and if you become tamei, carbon tuma, you don't bring a carbon tuma. Now, so what does that mean? It says if he becomes tamei, the Nazir Shimshon, he may not bring he doesn't bring a carbon tuma. Doesn't have to bring anything for it. Is he allowed to become tamei? Does the Mishnah mean if he becomes tamei means he's not supposed to become tamei, but if he does become tamei, you don't bring any karbanos? Or does it really mean that he's even allowed to become tamei? And the answer is that a Nazir Shimshon is allowed to become tamei with a dead body. That is one of the things that makes Nazir Shimshon different. As they bring down here, Shimshon. What did I say here? Right. The Bartanura says, even initially he can become tamei from a dead body. The Shimshon did that.
He killed everybody. Right.
Well, God, whatever. Shimshon did that. Okay? And therefore you see that the Nazir Shimshon is allowed to become impure. So why does it say if he becomes pure, it doesn't bring a carbon tumah? So the answer is, it's that it's kind of continuing the same style as before. Being by the Nazir Olam, it says, if he becomes tamei, he brings. So here, kind of to keep the form the same, he says by Nazir. The Mishnah says by Nazir Shimishin, and if he becomes tamei, he doesn't bring. But initially, he is allowed to become tamei. And the fact that we say these leniencies regarding the whether we're talking about the leniencies regarding both the Nazir Shimishin and the Nazir Olam, the permanent Nazir, are all halacha l'Moshe Sinai, that these leniencies apply. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.